Hello everybody, this is Deucey, and today in EncounterPlus we are taking a look at assets. We're going to do a deep dive into working with images and building maps and adding them to tokens and all that jazz. So the first thing I want to mention is that assets can be both used for building a map and putting objects onto the map and for adding imagery to monsters, spells, items, player characters, even areas of effect. So to start, I'm just going to search for, let's say, a null. Cool. And if I just click the name where it says null, it will open up in the browser a quick search for D&D 5e null. So there's all sorts of stuff that I can pick from right here. And I can just drag an image right onto there and be done with it. So that's a quick way to add assets to EncounterPlus. On iOS, you can do this split screen stuff as well. You can open up Safari and split screen, just kind of Google how to do that and drag stuff in. You can drag things right into your map here. And you can also do it with files. So while I've got these open in the Finder here, and I can just drag these guys right in, you can also do split screen with the Files app on iOS on your iPad and drag stuff in straight from Files. Super handy. Now, I did this with a monster, but it's the same with a player character, spell, or an item. Those are all great ways to get that stuff in here. Now, let's say you wanted to start to save some of your assets into EncounterPlus so that you can have them right at your fingertips whenever you're building things. Well, I'm just going to open up the library here and go to packs. Now, when I first go to packs, it asks if I want to import the default pack. I'm going to go ahead and do that. We get these great assets from 2-Minute Tabletop. Fantastic. And let's see. I can just start to bring some of these guys in right away. Here we go. We've got some trees. Got a tent. Nice. Now let's say I wanted to start making my own pack. I just hit the plus button up here. Going to call this Deucey's Asset Pack. Could put other information here if we want and hit save. Now I could get in here and hit the plus button to start adding folders or assets and go browse my files as I add assets to put images in here and set stuff up. But a much faster way is to go split screen again on iOS or on Mac. Just start dragging stuff in here. So I've got some bedrolls maybe I want. I've got campfire, some trees. Here's an old campfire, some rocks, all this kind of stuff. Cool. And of course, split screen with Safari on iOS, or just bring up a browser here and I can drag images right in from the web into here as well. Super handy for quickly building out an asset pack. Now, a lot of these tokens, well, all the tokens that we're using here today, except for this random one that I found online that I'm going to get rid of, are from 2-Minute Tabletop. And 2-Minute Tabletop is awesome. They've got tons of free maps. They've got tons of free tiles. They've got tokens for PCs and for monsters that you can customize. Go check them out. I'm going to put a link to their Patreon in the description, or their website, where you can just go buy stuff or sign up for the Patreon and get all the new stuff as it comes out. Super cool. Definitely check out 2-Minute Tabletop. We're using them all here today. They are wonderful. So I've got this forest glade that's kind of almost like a blank background map that I can drop into here. And when I drop it in, you see it's quite large. Now I can zoom out. I can click on it, and I could definitely change the size by hand if I want to. Get the little handle there. Oh, but that's going to squish it that way. So something I like to do instead is just bring it in to the asset pack. And if I go in here to edit it, we can say, you know what? I want this to be, I don't know, 20 by 30. And we'll call this Forest Glade and hit save. Now when I bring in, it's automatically going to go 20 by 30. But I should have done 30 by 20. Whoops. Okay, let's make that change real quick. And bring it in. Cool. If I knew exactly, what the size of that was, I could type that in, but that's going to get me there. Now, I've got a little problem that my Forest Glade is covering up all of my other stuff. Well, right here in the layer mode, I've been in the token layer the whole time. I should have been in the map layer when I'm adding in this kind of map background. So now I'll click here, go to the map layer and drag this in, and you see it puts it behind the grid and it puts it behind these objects and tokens. Now these are actually objects rather than tokens, which means the reason I call them objects is because I'm not planning on moving them around a lot. So I can click edit and I can put them on any of these layers. The token layer, which is things that are going to be moved around a lot, like your baddies, your player characters. The object layer, stuff like this that won't get moved around often, if at all. And again, the map layer is this layer that's, a big portion of your map. With the DM layer, stuff that's just hidden from the players. So I'm going to put this tent that's on the token layer. I'm going to put it on the object layer. Just like that. Now it puts me back on the token layer automatically. So I'm actually just going to delete these trees to make this easier and drag them in now that I'm on the object layer. Cool. We're just going to add some of these bedrolls. Now this bedroll is kind of big, right? So let's delete that. Going to hit edit. And just like I did with the map, I'm going to say, let's make this like 1 by 2 or 2 by 1. I think it's the height first. I can hit the load button up here if I want to as well. Oh, I got it backwards again. I'm just going to change this to 1 by 2, 1 wide, 2 tall. I can just hit the load button if I want, and that sticks it in there. Oops, grabbed one of those corners to change the size. Or, of course, I can drag them in. And, if I didn't want to mess with those custom sizes, there's no reason why I can't zoom in a little here and just change it by hand. No problem there. Cool. I can also grab this bottom thing here and change the angle a little bit. And if I turn off snap to grid, it'll let me do like small angle increment changes. Perfect. So this is great. We've got a basic map built out here, but this background layer was pre-made, which is awesome. What if I kind of want to make my own? Well, I've got this grass texture from 2 Minute Tabletop that I can drop into here. Now that's a pretty big grass texture. I could just leave it just like that, but just like before, I'm going to bring it into my asset pack. Perfect. And I'm going to say this file was an 8 by 8. So I'm going to do 8 by 8 right here. Save that guy and bring it in. And now it's exactly the right size. I can have it snap to the grid. Perfect. Now, if I wanted to fill this out, it's going to make it big or small again. But there's this really cool option called pattern. So if I edit this, now these are a bunch of token options that we'll look at in a minute, but if I click this, it takes me to this asset menu, this edit asset menu, which is the same as if I had clicked this and gone to edit as well. Same options. Now I'm going to change this from just being an image to being a pattern and hit save. Now this pattern will be repeating, but you'll notice the size has jumped back to being a bit too large again. So if we edit this, we can change the scale. Let's do, 0.2, 20%. Cool. Now it will automatically repeat over and over again, no matter how big or small I make it, at about the size that I was hoping for. Now, if you're not seeing what's happening, let me turn this tree here. Let me go to the object layer, turn this tree into a pattern. And you'll see now it's just repeating that tree over and over again. I could make a quick forest that way if I really wanted to. So that's what it was doing. It was just that that asset was made to look seamless when it repeats over and over, and the tree was not made to look seamless. Cool. So now I've got my basic map here. Let's take a look at some more of these token settings. So if I click on this and I hit edit, we've got what layer it's on. We've got the Z order. So that's just what's it coming above or below. That only affects the object layer. It does not affect the token layer. So if I move this up here, it's on top of it. But if I wanted it to be under, I can change the Z order. Let's actually change the Z order of this. And a shortcut here is to hit these up and down arrows. Is just the same as hitting edit and doing Z order up and down. And now the bedroll is kind of peeking out from the tent. Cool. Let's see what else we've got under here. Edit. Oh, and of course, we've got shortcuts to delete, of course, and to hide. Copy is basically just duplicating it. Oops, and I grabbed the corner there and stretched it out a little bit. Well, there we go. Edit, of course, we've got hide down here as well at the very bottom, as well as locked, which will just make it so we don't accidentally move it around. Now, line of sight. I did line of sight in the previous video, but this would treat this as like a torch that would get lit up. And if I turn on always visible, it would show it with line of sight. Go check out my line of sight video if you really want to dive into this. But this is cool to add to a torch or to a fireplace at night, and it will spill light out. Now, we're going to start to take a look at components. Let's say this bedroll was just, I don't know, a little bit dirtier than the other ones. I can get in here and change like what the look of this is here. Change the color, change the saturation, change how bright or dark the thing is. Yeah, so I can mess around with this and say, look, that one looks a little bit different. I can enable or disable the whole thing right here. And if I back up, I can swipe to the left and hit delete. Good to go. Puts it right back to normal. I can add a tint. It does a very similar thing, but instead you just pick a color and it just does a color overlay across the whole thing. So you can quickly change colors of your assets. This could be helpful, like if you've got a bunch of trees that all are looking a little too samey, you just get in here and tweak the tint of some of these trees, and they'll look start looking a little bit different, slightly different colors, different brightnesses. Now for this one, I'm going to drop a fireplace in. This campfire would actually be a good one to put some of that line of sight on here. But let me show you a few of these other fun things that we can do. We can change the opacity. So that's pretty straightforward. But it says animation opacity. So I'm going to go from 0.5 to 1, which means from half value to full value. And you see it cycling through that. You could say how many times you want it to repeat. If it's 0, it's going to repeat for infinite. Duration is how long it's going to go. So now it's doing it every 2 seconds. And auto reverse means it's going to kind of pulse. It's going to go all the way to fully opaque and then back and forth rather than just kind of rolling right through that animation. So now our campfire's fading in and out a little bit. Cool. I can go back, add another component like scale. So scale is going to change the size from, let's say, half the size to twice the size. Say how many times we want it to repeat. Duration, again, we can slow it down again. And auto reverse means it'll go back and forth. Cool. So you could do all sorts of fancy effects on here with this stuff. Now the last one is rotation. So I'm going to do from 0 to 360, so it does a full spin. Duration here. If I'm going to do like 300 here. You can see it, yep, going now. Or if I did negative 100, it's going to spin the other way really fast. If I do 1,000, it's going to go really slow. 2,000. Cool. And auto reverse means when it gets to the end, it'll flip back as well. Repeat however many times you want. Cool. We'll save that now. So you can mix and match these animation components to your art's desire to create all sorts of fun effects. Now let's say I found an image that I want to use and I bring it in here. Cool. And after the fact, I go, you know what? I really should designate this as having a certain stat block. Well, I can hit edit, scroll down, reference, and now I can find the stat block that I want to add to this here. So now it's attached it as an orc, and it has that information if I hit this little hashtag. This could be a link to a different map. So maybe at the edge of the map, you have something that links off to a different map or to a picture or to whatever you need it to. That reference option just lets you link this token or any object to anything else at all that is in EncounterPlus. Maps, items, spells, whatever. Super handy. Cool. Now that we're more or less done with this map, I can hit the share button down here and I could quickly email, send as a message, airdrop this map to anybody they wanted to. Maybe it's a map of a larger area that we want the players to be able to reference between sessions. I'm just going to hit notes so it pulls up real fast here. And there is our image saved out, ready to be used. Cool. Now something I'm realizing I should have done at the beginning here is when I made all this map here, I really should have gone into a campaign and created a new map here first to start from so that it could be saved. You can just save it, load it up. Because right now, this is just kind of playing in no man's land. In the future, the app is going to have everything automatically get put into a campaign so you don't run into this issue of this map of, like, where is it saved? It's not saved anywhere. But for yours, make sure you go create a campaign and create a map first before you do all the stuff that I just did. Now, something else we can add assets to are spell templates. So if I hit this guy right here, I'm going to pick a sphere spell template and drag it out. Let's do 20. If I get close to 20, now I've got snapping on. It'll snap exactly. All right. Remember, as you're building maps, that snapping, turning that on and off as needed is very helpful. And the cool thing about this is it shows exactly wherever you place it, what squares are going to be affected by it. They all get highlighted. Now I can edit this and I can add an asset to this. Let's just search for fireball. There we go. And now it's not just a, pink blob there, but it actually looks like a fireball as we're measuring out the size. Very cool. Now, if we didn't want them to see the pink first, we can double click, place a new area effect. It asks us what kind of area effect we want. This time I'm going to do a cone. And what source, what did it come from? You can change, angle and length of this cone. Reference, all the same stuff. However, asset right here. Burning hands. Now, there we go. It jumps it right in with the image already there, as well as highlighting all of the affected squares on the grid. Of course, I could have made it a different color to better match the effect, or I can change it after the fact if I really want it to match. There you go. Cool. Okay, I've deleted that. I'm going to add one more here. Just like everything else, we can add components to this as well, though. So we can say, let's change the scale from, say 20% size to 120%. The duration, let's do a little slower. Save that. And now we've got an exploding fireball. Awesome. Let's delete that. In a second, I want to talk about importing pre-animated assets. But first of all, I want to talk about importing. But before we talk about importing, we have to talk about exporting. So here's my asset pack. I can hit the gear up here, choose export, a pack. And of course, there's all those other things I could export as well. I'll export my asset pack. And now it has saved it right there. Cool. And if I want to import assets, I can do that as well. On the Mac, I can also just double click on an asset pack and it will add it right away. Cool. Now we can see there are these assets and there's a few types in here that I want to show you. The first one is animated. We're not going to talk too much about how to make these. They are called sprite sheets though. And if you drop them off, they are pre-animated assets that you can change the size of. Very cool. And if you hit the edit button up here, you'll see that the style is called a sprite sheet. You can go Google how to make sprite sheets. There's some tools out there that make it easier than trying to do it all by hand. I'll do a whole video on that later, but that's pretty cool and kind of a fun way that you could also do spell effects. Great. Now I'm going to do some auras. But before I do an aura, let's add a couple of bad guys in here. So let's search for some goblins. Cool. We've got some goblins in there. Let's say one of these goblins has some special effect going on. I can swipe to the left, hit the edit button, go choose an aura, And I can say, okay, it was a 10-foot radius, give it a color where it says empty. That asset there, let's give it an asset and just search for aura, and it's going to be one of these. Let's give it whatever this one is. Now it has an aura that follows it around. Very cool. We could have done the aura without an asset, and that works just as well. So if I go to this aura and remove the asset, you'll see it just gives us that standard measurement. So we can make them fancy by adding assets to those auras. These last ones that are called spells, they're really just still images, but they all can be set here to be the right size for whatever spell. 8 by 8, like a fireball. And this is another way that you could just quickly, bam, plop in a fireball if you didn't mind not having the measurement for you. Awesome. Now this last part is a fancy trick that is going to help us out if we have lots of different images that we want to use. Let me explain what I mean. First, I'm going to get rid of our goblins. Notice they don't have any images, and we could just, bring up goblin and drag an image onto here. That's great, but goblins, they tend to come in packs. We're usually using a bunch of them. So if we want, we can actually have EncounterPlus vary the tokens, the artwork that is being used for these goblins instead of it being the same one. So I'm going to create a new asset pack. I'm going to call it Monsters. Cool. I'm going to bring some goblins in here. Awesome. And now, one of these, I'm just going to name Goblin, first of all. Cool. Goblin. The second one, I'm going to name Goblin 2. Goblin 2. But I'm going to add the tag Goblin. And the third one, I'm not going to change the name at all. I'm just going to add the tag Goblin. So I've got this set of goblins under monsters. Now I need to go to the settings. Now I just need to tell it where to put all these tokens that I want it to use. Asset pack for tokens. Which one? The one called monsters. Check that box and done. Now, when I start to add some goblins, however I do it, whether I do it from here or I do it from here, I add these goblins in, and it will automatically vary the artwork for them as I add them in. Pretty cool. Now, I should have probably taken a minute and gone through with all these and set them to be one by one so that the size was right, but you get the idea. Okay, jumping in here with a little note. Something I noticed is that on the Mac side, it looks like there's a little bug where it doesn't bring in the file name. So I'm going to show you here on iOS how I can bring files up and do split screen here. So here's these files that I've got with these goblins. And if I drag these goblins in, what it does is it will drop them in here, but it will also keep their names correctly. And notice how this third one got really big. That's because the file name was actually 2 by 2 right there. So it actually looks at the file name to know what size to set the squares. So if you've got them named that way on the iPad, they'll pop in that way. Looks like it's not quite set up that way on the Mac quite yet. Hopefully that's something that's in the works. Now, if I go to a pack, here, and I bring these in, it should be just the same. There we go. The name comes over, and it automatically figures out what the grid size should be because of the name of the file. So a couple little tips there that will help you on the iPad side, and hopefully on the Mac side, that stuff starts working the same way soon. Well, that is it for our deep dive into assets. If you have any questions, drop a comment below or hop over to our Discord. Again, please check out 2 Minute Tabletop's Patreon. I made these goblin assets with their token maker, their free token maker, that you can go over there and you add colors in, and it will automatically, let you basically colorize these to be all different things. They've got so much cool stuff. Check them out. And you can always hop onto our Discord for EncounterPlus. There's a link in the description. We'll see you around. Have fun customizing all of your maps.